Okay. Welcome to the Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission regular meeting for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Sue, would you call roll, please?
Yes. Mark Ingram?
Here.
Kevin Rule?
Here.
Jonathan Teagan?
Here.
Pat Costner? Here. And I'm Sue Hubbard is here.
Okay. Ruth had contacted us and let us know that she was going to be a bit late, but we're going to go ahead and get started. She can join the meeting later. Before we approve the agenda, there are a couple changes we need to add to it. There needs to be an item number 10. We are required to read into the minutes a letter that will be addressed to Cornerstone Bank in order to change the names on the signature cards. So once we have done the officer elections and appointed the committees, the chair, vice chair, and 2 finance committee members are the ones that go on the signature cards. So we will fill out the letter with the appropriate names to remove and the appropriate names to add, read it into the minutes, vote on it. That way we can short circuit this several month process that it was last year. The other one is item number 5 is a discussion issue.
Oh, yeah, you didn't get item 1.
And not a vote.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think that's it, unless anybody else has anything.
Yeah, I had sent out a revised agenda that had an item number 1 that wasn't on before. So if you didn't get that, I have a copy for you.
Thank you. You need one as well? Oh, no. Yes.
I'm Pat.
Yes, Pat? What?
Thank you. I want to move that agenda item, approval of minutes, be the 4th item on the agenda after call to order, roll call, and approval of the agenda at this meeting and all regular meetings in the future.
Okay. Is there a reason that we need to move it? I mean, it's typically been, since I've been on the commission, it's been the last item.
Well, in most other boards and commissions I've served on, it is put earlier in the agenda because often and sometimes in the minutes there are issues or there's discussion that's pertinent to what's happening in this meeting.
Okay.
I actually just checked, looking at the bylaws, it says approval of previous minutes should be after approval of agenda.
Okay, that's fine.
Point of order, I think somebody needs to second the motion then.
Okay. Would you make that as a motion?
Yes, I did. I moved that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Yes.
All right. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Unanimous? Okay. And I get a motion to approve the agenda with amendments.
Yes, I motion that we approve the agenda with amendments.
Okay. Second?
A second.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Approval is unanimous. Okay. You have copies of the meeting minutes, Sue?
Yeah, I have sent them out. So I have a copy. I don't have copies for everybody.
Okay.
I'm actually just reaching for them now because I didn't think I needed them until later.
Because it was the regular meeting from
Yeah. So what I have is
December and the special meeting, right?
no. I have a regular meeting from October because haven't had a regular meeting since then. I have a special meeting from December and a special meeting in February.
Were all of those attached? I thought there were only 2 that were, or no.
I thought I had attached 3. I don't know what anybody else got. Which one did not get attached, do you think?
I don't know. I don't have my computer with me. I went through the ones that were on there.
Did anyone else know how many minutes they got attached to my email?
Not printed out.
I didn't hear.
I thought I'd sent out 3 minutes. Kevin says he only received 2, and we're trying to figure out if
I
one...
received 3.
I see 3.
Kevin, are you okay moving ahead with 3, or do you want to delay one
No,
till...
let me just make sure. Where is it? There. So which email did you have them attached to? The only thing I've got attached to the one that you sent out.
It was on Friday, because I thought I wasn't going to be sending out the agenda, and so I had sent it out as a separate email with just the 3.
Okay.
Got on the 11th.
Separate, I got it, okay.
While everyone's looking at those, I think we should have the record reflect that Ruth Hager just...
Yeah.
Thank you, yes. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, so going back to, do you want to do them one at a time, or would you prefer to do?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, so unless there's an objection, if everyone has had a chance to review them, and the one that I was missing was the most recent one, the special meeting, and I don't know, you may just not have seen that on the attachment. So
Excuse
can I get a
me,
motion to approve the minutes?
if I may, it's really difficult to hear over here.
Okay, I think it's difficult in general.
I know.
And if you turn your head away from the microphone, it makes it difficult. So can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from said date. I forgot what it was.
Which ones are we approving?
The,
All 3 of them, Ruth? I mean,
All 3 of them.
all 3 of them,
all
yes.
3 of them. Is anyone seconding that?
I have a question about the minutes. If I remember, I don't, okay, I have a question about the minutes,
Okay,
which is, the ones I've seen only have, like, if there has been a motion made and it's been approved.
correct. That's because the meetings are recorded. So we don't need to have detailed minutes. We just need to have record of the actions. If anyone wishes to get any detail on what was discussed, they can go to the recordings on the city's YouTube site. And that's from the city, that's from the mayor.
That's from the city?
Yes. It's city policy. Since they started recording all of the meetings, that's policy.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get a second?
We did.
Second.
Second?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I wasn't here for any of those? Okay.
Yeah, we actually have to have some people who weren't there vote, otherwise we can't get a quorum.
Okay, next item on the agenda is public comments. If you would, please limit comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. Sharon Roberts, Eureka Springs citizen. There have been several new additions to our parks: at Leatherwood, a bridge; at Cave Spring, a gate installed over the cave entrance; and a proposed art installation at Harmon Park. Please consider that collaborative input from users of these areas is an essential element of city parks. In fact, that is stated in the handbook. It is time to notify citizens ahead of decision-making through the use of digital and print media the opportunity to give such input. When we think socially, we think better than when we think alone. In a recent email, you stated you are open to constructive feedback. We need to be an informed public to be constructive. A surprised public tends to reactive questioning. Being the sage on a stage, holding cards close to the vest, creates a disengaged and suspicious taxpayer base. An example might be the new 70-foot bridge over Leatherwood Creek and Leatherwood Park. If we, the tax-paying users, had been given opportunity to provide proactive input, perhaps the bridge would have received an improved placement site where bikes would not travel on the track. Ideally, the bridge may have been placed where Miners Rock Trail currently crosses to meet Slow Roll Trail. Young mothers with strollers and children, as well as those who rely on the track for safe exercise, will now have increased bike traffic on the single-lane paved surface. I agree commissioners are to manage day-to-day operations, repairs, and maintenance. Capital improvements and long-range planning should be open to citizen input sessions. A written plan open for all of you would be an investment in taxpayer trust and cost nothing but your time, which you have graciously volunteered by serving on the commission. I look forward to your improved communication and opportunity beyond a 3-minute public comment for all citizens to give input as it relates to our public spaces. I request that this public comment is added to the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
One moment.
Okay.
Good evening. Pat Matsugas, 5 Mountain. Thank you for those comments. Absolutely speaking to how many of us in this town feel. It has only been a moment since we got rid of Bill Featherstone and Justin Huss, and we are still $35,000 of unaccounted money in prior audits that is yet to be accounted for. At some point in time, all these questions I hope will be answered, but I hope not before we take time to look at all of this, which brings me backwards, which I have to say, I was devastated when I saw that you took $140,000 out of reserves for your budget this year. Never should have happened. You should have adjusted your budget downward. You are spending too big, which brings me to planning. If you don't have a plan, you don't know what you're going to spend. And the community of this town and this area wants to be supportive to parks. But we can't because we don't know what the plan is. And I understand that, Scott, you said to, I can call you anytime. I want it out in the public. I want us to have the same opportunity that Fayetteville, Rogers, Lowell, and everybody else has. I want 6 months out because everybody I know is a business person or is working very hard. We need time. That's what government does. Government slows down because government is inclusive. In your private businesses, you are all entitled to do whatever you want, and far be it from me to get involved. But when it comes to government, you have to put the brakes on so that you can include all of us. Because we all don't have 20 minutes here or 20 minutes there. I want to see a plan that I can think about. I'm an aging person. And if I'd known it, I went back to your parks minutes from June forward. I still have not seen a vote where you guys voted to put a bridge in at Leatherwood. It's very ugly, it's very disappointing. Now, my other notes. Yes to the Stephen Foster thing. Bad idea not to be putting money into our reserves. And our budget is we're way over. There's way too much money we're putting out here. Corporation versus private. As I say, corporation can do what they want. Private, when you are charging money, if a corporation or a business comes to Leatherwood and they want to rent the grounds, that should be one thing. But a local should be able to go to Leatherwood and say, I want to have a family reunion or a party or whatever, and only be charged for trash. That's it. We pay this money through our tax, in case you haven't noticed. That tax that could be outvoted to you in November. There's no plan for Leatherwood. Inclusivity means putting it out there for everyone. The bridge was I never saw a formal vote on the bridge, and if you did, I'm sorry to say that I didn't see it. The commissioner directs, the commission, you guys, direct the chair. The chair oversees the director of parks.
Thank you, Pat.
And the chair should rotate. We know what long-term chairs can do. Oh, and Harding Springs is really ugly since you did all that tear down.
Any more public comments? Okay, we will move on to chair's comments. So since we did not have a January meeting, I just want to go through a brief recap of where we've been over the last year. Both Scott and I found ourselves in our positions toward the beginning of last year, a little before the beginning of last year. And a lot of the year has been in reassessment and triage, if you will. Scott, along with the Finance Committee, put an enormous amount of effort in trying to clean up the finances, a chart of accounts that was just completely out of control. And we knew that we wouldn't be able to affect it significantly until we got into the new year. We created a completely new chart of accounts and numbered accounts with much greater clarity that has been implemented now that we're in the new year. Unfortunately, we were stuck with the old chart of accounts and just making modifications through last year. I think what we're going to see is much greater clarity going into this year. One of the things that we recognized last year was that there were pretty substantial infrastructure problems throughout the park system. A lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of kicking the can down the road, frankly. The underlying problem that is driving the assessment at Basin Park has been known for 10 years. And it is a fundamental flaw because it is undermining the fill under the plaza of the park. And once the engineering assessment is done, I anticipate that it is going to take quite a large effort to correct the issues that exist there. One of the things that we consciously did was start an assessment program. We recognize that there are a number of issues in all the spring gardens, and a great deal of it is due to trees being allowed to grow in places that they should never have. The failure at Crescent last week is directly caused by a tree that was allowed to grow right along the edge of the wall that allowed more moisture in, freeze thaw, eventually pulled the wall down. And the irony is that that wasn't the tree that we were most worried about. There are two other in the lower walls that the displacement of the walls is concerning. Same thing with Basin Park. It's not only the plaza, the fountain is sinking because the drainage tunnel underneath it is collapsing and it's undermining the fill. The band shell has got significant issues, foundation issues, rot issues, and it's fundamentally because of the way it was built. It was built in a valley that focuses water straight into the back of the structure, and then for some reason when they built it, they decided to build a retaining wall that's about 6 inches away from the wall so that you can't get in there and maintain any of it. So the engineers that we hired will be doing a detailed assessment and making recommendations, and from that point then we can start deciding how we budget and what we're going to do to correct these issues. We've initiated the same thing with Lake Leatherwood, is a full assessment of the facility. There is not an accurate site plan that exists of the facility. The utilities, the only record we have of the utilities in the day use area is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with a hand-drawn sketch on it. So these are the things that we've started to be able to evaluate things more accurately. But one of the things in talking to conversations with the mayor and some others is I think there needs to be a recognition of what the limitations are on what we're going to be able to do. I mean, the dam alone, because it is a landmark structure, it is one of the few structures in the city limits of Eureka Springs that is on the National Register of its own merit. That railing is going to need to be restored in order to not lose that landmark status, the way we did with the picnic pavilion, because it was so badly deteriorated, we could not salvage a single piece of wood out of it. That dam, because it is 660 feet long, will most likely cost somewhere up to $500,000 to restore the railing. And then once it's restored, it still will not meet any current standards as a safety railing. So there's still decisions that are going to have to be made about access to it in the future. But just as a comparison, looking at some of the communities over in the corridor, when you take the 1,800 acres of parks in Eureka Springs and our budget, it works out to about $500 per acre. If you compare that to Rogers, which has 400 acres and almost a $6 million budget, it works out to a little over $12,000 per acre managed. Fayetteville, which is probably closer in the types of parks it has, lists 4,000 acres under management. And when you look at Kessler Mountain and Lake Fayetteville, it's very similar to Lake Leatherwood. It's mostly forested land, some trails, lake activity areas, but very limited. Their budget works out to almost $5,000 per acre. So we're always going to be restricted in what we're able to do, and we're always going to be restricted in the staff that we're able to have. I mean, Scott wears a lot of hats right now. He's basically responsible for finances. He's responsible for managing the entire staff. He's responsible for strategic direction as well as day-to-day operations. So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on this year is putting out all the knowns, the known issues that we have. We're going to be looking at the known potential problems that we have, and we've asked Chris Fisher to do an evaluation of the spring gardens from the perspective of what's growing in them. We now have Stacy Hearn looking at the risks to the built structure, the stone walls, and identifying future potential failure issues. And we will be addressing those. And once Scott has got a list of everything together, then we will begin prioritizing what we're going to be spending money on. But if you just take a ballpark of what's in front of us, Basin Park, as a worst case, you're looking at $1.5 million or more to correct the issues there. The dam is about $500,000. The bathhouse, which is another landmark structure that has been left to deteriorate, is probably going to be at least $250,000 to do a reasonable renovation on it and retain its historic significance. And then you've got the various spring gardens in town that we still have to address issues on. So there's a lot of things facing us, and we are moving at it as quickly as we can and as judiciously as we can. And it's going to take an effort from everybody to make sure that these things are done correctly. So I will turn the floor over to Scott for the director's report.
Thank you. I have mixed emotions about the things that we have to report. Firstly, because there's so much that needs to be done. I found out a week ago that the wall at Crescent Spring had, in fact, collapsed. Fortunately, it was a small portion of the wall, but it's one of those things that I've been looking at for quite some time, and knowing that we're going to need to do some work on that. And yet, we are proceeding with plans to take care of issues like that and the major issues that were just mentioned. The walls at Crescent Spring, the one that collapsed, has already been discussed with Stacy Mahern, who's just been mentioned. He'll repair that one. He's also assessing all of the walls at all of the parks on Spring Street, and will give us a report on that. I don't expect that his report is going to reveal things that are going to be inexpensive to deal with. And so that is a hurdle that I look at, knowing that it's going to take a lot of effort on the part of this commission and our staff to take care of these sorts of things. The wall at Crescent Spring would be one of the first things for me to discuss. The wall is out of plumb, and portions of it at least are going to have to be redone. Magnetic Spring, on the other hand, is one that has been torn up now for a couple of months. Between the weather and some other things that are going on, and Stacy's Stoneworks could not get connected to the drainage line that's under the road at Magnetic Spring. That is now done, and they are now backfilling, getting ready to repave the road there. The steps going up to the basins are going to be completely done. The beds, the stone around the beds are being done, not with just little rocks piled there like they were. They're being done appropriately. The whole surface of the area in front of the basins will be redone. More importantly, the walls on the basins are being done in a way they were never done. We're looking at enhancing the quality of these things. For instance, those walls failed because the limestone, when constantly exposed to water, deteriorates, and those walls deteriorated. So these walls that we're putting in now will have reinforced concrete, and then the stone, the reinforced concrete, will be sealed from the inside. And so I'm confident in the outcome of that repair, that will be something that for decades to come will not need any substantial repairs. I'm proud to see the bridge that's going in and is almost completed at Lake Leatherwood Park. That was identified 4 or 5 years ago by a progressive trail design report where they assessed our trails, and it was stated that we needed a bridge to cross from all of the parking that we have over at the ball field area to get to the trailhead area, whether for bikes or hikers. That bridge was specifically designed to be able to accommodate traffic in both directions, and it is not a bike bridge. It is a bridge for bikes, hikers, any other means of transportation, and it's something that was discussed at various meetings. It was approved for us to spend up to $30,000 on our last budget, and it was discussed, specific questions about that bridge, where it was going, how it was going to be installed, etc. It was also in my last two reports, my year-end reports, that bridge was in the works and that it was proposed to be completed in the first quarter of 2022. So it's right on track with all the discussions that have taken place over the last few years. So we're glad to see that, and it was constructed without spending a dime of Parks funds. We budgeted $30,000. We did not have to spend a dime of that. Harding Spring. Harding Spring is disappointing what happened to that. But it was not something that we did. We did not dig that up. There was a sinkhole that was caused by a collapse of a concrete culvert. That sinkhole was large enough that 2 or 3 of us could have gotten into that hole at one time. It was right next to a walkway. Anybody could have slipped and fallen into that. Even so, that's the jurisdiction of Public Works to fix. They're the ones that dug that up. They had to dig it up to see what they were dealing with. They also realized that that sinkhole was caused by the catalpa tree, the large catalpa tree that was right there. There was a root. It was described about the size of a grown man's thigh, so I'd say about 12 inches, that broke through the concrete culvert underneath and destroyed it, and it had to be removed to be able to replace the drainage line that was under there. I met with a director of Public Works this week, who had indicated that he believes that they should be able to get that fixed within very soon. I'm optimistic it'll be done within a couple of weeks. Then we can begin the process of restoring that garden to the way it should look. But that is the type of thing that we're looking at in parks right now, is a lot of this underground stuff. Our problem at Basin Park is due to a collapse of a very similar type of a culvert underneath the concrete. And that's why it went from, we had a grant to fix that stone that was in the $9,000 range, and now we're looking at tens of thousands, if not more, just to fix that collapse. And so we're not putting Band-Aids on things. We're hiring architects, engineers, assessing the things that are wrong and then fixing them properly, and that's time-consuming. The Doughboy statue, I think everyone might recall, that was damaged by vandalism some time ago, a few months ago. I did speak with the person who's fixing that. He had to actually search for and have brought in the materials to fix it. He actually has to carve portions that I think people took souvenirs or something, and so he has to actually create, I think the new nose and the brim of the hat have to be recreated, and some other things. And he does have those materials in place, and I hope that will be fixed before long. We have hired Craft and Tull to do the site plans at Lake Leatherwood City Park. That's been mentioned by Chairman Ruley, so I won't say anything else about that, other than that all we're doing at this point is assessing what we have. There will be a planning process, a very comprehensive and public planning process that will follow, but the first step is hiring the professionals to do the assessment and give us the as-built plans so we know what we're dealing with when we decide where we're going to go from here. Basin Park, we don't have a contract yet with an engineer for assessment of Basin Park, but we had a request for proposals, and McClelland, the engineering firm that responded, is the firm that we will likely engage to do the assessment of Basin Park. So I'll be very glad to see that going. I do hear the comments, even some tonight, about communication and such. In fact, Ms. Roberts in an email recently mentioned publishing some of the, I don't recall whether she used the term blog or not, but publishing information on what's going on in the parks. And we did just post a blog that identifies some of the major issues that are going on in parks, and we think that'll help to better inform the public as to things that are going on. We can't cover every little detail. We have a lot that we do every week, so we can't cover every wall we're going to paint or every hole we're going to patch, but at least the big items will be identified on there. That way, when you come to the meetings, and you care to engage in your public comment, you'll at least know the things that we have planned for the upcoming weeks and months. And we hope that that'll be helpful in receiving your input in a more comprehensive manner. And we look forward to that. Finally, I think I'll just mention that we do have a couple of grants that are in the process. Chris Fisher is going to report here momentarily on a forestry initiative that we commenced, probably been at it about 6 months now. He and Stephen Dickey have been working tirelessly on that project, and I'm proud to see what's going on there. But they are in the process of preparing a much larger grant that will enable us to restore several of the much larger glades. So we hope that this will evolve into a situation where we are restoring all of the glades out there that were identified by Theo Witzel 3 or 4 years ago as being essential habitat. So I'm proud to see the progress that's taking place there. And although we are paying some consultants and we have a grant, a lot of that is driven by volunteerism as well. And so I'm proud that we have such an important project as restoring those glades that was envisioned and in a large part was effected by volunteerism. And so that's great to see. We also have a lake and water quality grant that we just applied for. You might recall we engaged the services of Sandy Formica 6 or more months ago, and one of the things that she's done is helped us to apply for 2 substantial grants, actually, to address the lake and water quality issues out at Lake Leatherwood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Could we ask questions now?
Well, we typically don't.
Okay.
Is there something specific that...
Well, I was just wondering about the Craft and Towel, what was happening on that. It seemed like it was signed a while ago, and I just wondered if it was moving forward.
I was wondering why it was taking so long, too. I did reach out to them. I think a large part of it was holidays. One of their principals had ended up with COVID, was out for a couple of weeks. Then the holidays took place. We met out there about 2 weeks ago, and they had already done some work and were at the point of asking some questions, asking for me to point out where water shutoff valves were and that sort of detail. So I would expect progress now that they're actually on it and people appear to be healthy. It should go much quicker.
Okay, good.
Okay. Introduction of new commissioners. I think we'll start with Jonathan, since he never got a formal introduction since joining the commission. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. My name is Jonathan Tigan. I grew up here. My family moved here from Los Angeles when I was a young child. Grew up here. Love this town. I wanted to, volunteer some of my time to help take care of some of the stuff I'm passionate about. I'm a very avid mountain biker and cyclist, and it means I spend a lot of times in our parks, and Lake Leatherwood is a very, very popular spot for me and my circle of friends. And so it's just something I really cared deeply about, and it was, this spot was recommended to me by a friend of mine, and I figured I would jump in here and take a little bit of responsibility and try and help out the town that I love. So.
Thank you. Pat, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Pat Costner. I'm a native of Arkansas, as you can tell from my speech, and I have lived here since 1974. And I guess my first major involvement, I did not move here because of Eureka Springs. I didn't even know anything about Eureka Springs, and to be honest, was more than a little disappointed when I found I had set me and my children down by a tourist town. But I did get involved back in the mid-'70s on into the '80s in a major effort here to have the city's wastewater system improved to the end of protecting and cleaning up the springs. And we succeeded in getting a large EPA grant, not much in today's dollars, well, about $300,000 grant in today's dollars. And we had probably the most comprehensive study of a municipality in karst terrain of the interactions of the city's wastewater system with those springs. Any maps you see that show the recharge zones for the springs came out of that study. We had the most effective Citizens Advisory Committee, again funded by EPA, that I know of. And we came up with a plan. Was the plan actually carried through? Not really, part of it, but not all of it. So that was my initiation and introduction really to Eureka Springs. And then in the years since then, I have predominantly worked nationally with Greenpeace US as the research director for a number of years. Then I moved to Greenpeace International, worked for them for the remaining time with Greenpeace, which was about 10 years. Worked with governments, citizens, and so on and so forth in countries on every continent many times. And then I came back to Eureka. I was based here, but then I came back. I was here, I was retired. And then SWEPCO came up. And then I was director of the effort that succeeded in stopping that transmission line, which, what our aim was to protect the natural beauty, the natural assets of, a corridor through northwest Arkansas. So then I finished that. And then I got re-engaged with Eureka directly when the mountain bike trails came up. And so I've been kind of watching and dealing with parks ever since. And I'm very happy to be here. And I look forward to working collaboratively with each and every one of you and with our citizenry. I agree with Sharon Roberts. Public participation is the key. It's the key to democracy. It's the key to the success of this commission. So here I am. I'm 81 years old, and here I am.
Thank you, Pat. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Ingram. I'm originally from Dallas-Fort Worth area. I moved up here in 2016. I spent the first 8 years of my career in county government, and in the next 30 years in government contracting for big Fortune 500 subcontractor, and most of it in supply chain management. I'm very interested in how we spend taxpayers' money and trying to keep our tax money in our jurisdiction. we've got people all over this county that should be able to reap the benefits of their own tax dollars by getting contracts. And I'm very interested in how we spend our money. But I'm also an ambassador for Eureka Springs, having lived all over the country, always talking about it. And when people come here, I want them to see our beautiful springs. I want them to see our beautiful parks. And we can't argue that that's the future of Eureka. It is our outdoor activities, and we want to make sure that this money is all being spent in the best way possible.
Thank you. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Finance Committee has nothing to report. We just approved the financials for the year last year, and we'll have a new Finance Committee at the end of the meeting tonight. So, old business, there is none. New business, first item is an update by Chris Fisher on the Forestry Initiative grant and the work that he and Steve are doing.
Good evening. Welcome new commissioners. That was good to hear the backgrounds on you guys. I'd also like to quickly comment on the substance of both the reports of the chairman and the director. It was good to hear the unfortunate list of items that are in the scope. I'd also like to thank you for the opportunity tonight to share an update on the current Arkansas Forestry Commission's Urban and Community Forestry Grant. And as Scott mentioned, it has a working title of a Forestry Initiative. It is part of an array of planning and assessment resources to assist parks and to involve the community with the mission to preserve, protect, and enhance our city's park spaces. Steve Dickey and I, working with Director Scott Miskill, have created a series of organizational tools to assemble and communicate the efforts and information involved in the delivery of the four components. Working with ClickUp, an organizational software, along with Zoom, Dropbox, and iNaturalist, we have set up a workable platform to administer and share the interactive tasks and goals of the grant. As the park's website is modified, we can present information and integrate public involvement as the grant process unfolds through the summer of 2023. Forest and Glade, which I believe Steve Dickey forwarded to you guys through email, is a quarterly newsletter that provides an ongoing view of the purpose and progress of the components of the grant and has been shared with you and our initial subject matter experts that are participating in the grant. This publication is conceived as the central tool to develop the community participation component of the grant and will be integrated into an ongoing redevelopment of information via the park's website. The focus of other efforts has involved the consideration of several research queries and conversations with experts such as Theo Witzel of the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, Jennifer Ogle of the U of A Herbarium, herpetologist and collared lizard expert Casey Brewster, Laurie Scott, director of the Outdoor Learning Laboratory at NWAC, Eric Fuselier of the Wild Ones and the Arkansas Native Plant Society, and with also the late Stephen Foster. Our outreach to these folks has centered upon planning to engage the community with specific grant components, starting with the tasks of studying and identifying the ecology and habitat of the Dolomite Glades in Lake Leatherwood City Park. This is described in the component titled Advance the Lake Leatherwood City Park Glade Restoration Proposal, which extends the ongoing current work unfolding in the educational demonstration walk-through glade near the trailhead area to the Beecham and Fuller trails. This highly visible and easily accessed site is directly related to considering the development of a digital learning center, conceived as a year-round resource facility for studying, working on, and learning about the restoration process in the Glades, and to also consider the extensive scope of natural habitat areas occurring throughout the park's full system of spaces within the city. The Glades in LLCP are an extensive area of uniquely sensitive habitat conditions in the Ozarks and northwest Arkansas, and they suffer from the encroachment of the regenerating forest of trees and shrubs. An intervention with this ecological process by addressing a group of former open farmlands once surrounding the lake built back in 1939 will be approached through an extensive consideration for how this can be achieved with best management practices for a long-term and successful approach. The intention centers upon training local citizen scientists to inventory these habitat areas and to assist with the determinations for reducing the encroaching forest and to increase the native flora and fauna communities of these glade areas. The community will also be invited to participate with developing the open space assessment framework as well as the conservation management implementation plan, two of the additional planning tools that the grant provides. So that's a quick few minutes to bring you up to date. I know you've got a busy evening ahead, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond. Meanwhile, you can take a look at Forest and Glade.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate your efforts.
Okey-doke.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2. Consideration of naming the glade currently referred to as the Educational Walkthrough Glade and the trail that runs through it after Stephen Foster.
I move to name the glade currently referred to as the Educational Walkthrough Glade and the trail that runs through it after Stephen Foster.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Jonathan? Discussion? Comments?
Yeah,
Yes, Pat?
Sorry, Pat, can
Glade with Sue.
No, it's Pat, Pat, go ahead.
Let's fight it out. All right. I agree that Stephen deserves a really wonderful memorial, and I'm pleased to see this being addressed on the agenda. However, the type and placement of this memorial deserves careful attention. For example, has this been discussed with the family?
Yes, it has.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So the thing to think about, I mean, I had great affection and enormous respect for Stephen, as most of us do. Stephen was a global expert. He was not a little fish. So do you really think that this memorial is the best way forward as a memorial for him? A glade and a short trail. So I just want to, and also, has the American Botanical Society been approached about either collaborating or contributing to a memorial for Stephen?
Well, we haven't gone to, the motion that's on the table is just simply to name it after him. There's been no work behind what that's going to look like until we have a vote in agreement that that's the approach that we're going to take.
And may I read from the text I received from his daughter, Abby, that when I requested her brother, and his widow, or Donna, Abby's been the one responding to me, and she said that she and the family are grateful to the parks being in contact with her and the work that we and others are putting in to honor her dad, and for the grace of the communication from everyone. Thank you. Much love, Abby. So she has been speaking for her brother and for everyone, and they were fine with that too. So Abby's been in contact, and she's very happy. So we're doing something.
If I may, I know I don't have a vote here, but I have some information that I think you should consider. I also have been in touch with the family. They, by the way, are wanting to schedule, in fact, have set a date that they want to do. In fact, they said they want to do it big out there at Lake Leatherwood City Park and have a memorial service. But as to this particular glade and this particular trail, the reason this came up is I think a lot of people don't realize how involved Mr. Foster remained in parks. He was one of our subject matter experts for this Glade and Forestry Initiative program. He gladly volunteered and was, expressed his how happy he was that he had the opportunity to do it. So this was the last thing that he worked on at parks, literally. The glade and the trail that will bear his name, hopefully, is something that he had enough interest in to volunteer a significant amount of his time. Now, the project had just started to get rolling, yes, but he knew the amount of work that it was going to entail and gladly volunteered for it. So I don't know that any of you knew all of that. I know at least Chris out there knew that, but that's something that should be considered. And when I spoke with his family, they were happy to hear that we were proposing this.
And he was always an advocate of interpretation and education, and that aspect of it really fits in with what he's always tried to do.
Yeah. So, Pat, you actually asked the question, and I was going to ask about the family being involved, and I'm glad to hear they are. I do have questions about the location. I know Steve was involved in this, but it was something he came to kind of later. I know at the beginning, what I knew of Steve, and I knew his interest in Leatherwood had a lot to do with the Leatherwood plants. And it might be nice to learn that. But I also think this would be an opportunity to get some more public input. Are there other people that had associations with him, and where do they think of at Lake Leatherwood that associated with Stephen? So I just kind of, I really love the idea of us doing something, but I do have questions about the location. At least at this point until we've gotten more input.
Okay. Any other comments?
Kevin, is it possible for me to add a little bit of info on this subject briefly? Sure. As to the background for Stephen and his interest in this particular glade that you all are considering for the memorial, when the Walton family was starting to move forward with their proposal for the gravity trails, Stephen worked behind the scenes to try to come to terms with what that project would avail to the park. And he believed that bringing gravity trails would be problematic, but he looked forward to the idea that a positive relationship with the Walton family and the Trailblazers group could at some point lead to a further relationship that would develop educational facilities as in the Lake Leatherwood master plan. And as that was, before that had unfolded, during a Natural Heritage Month grant that we had, Casey Brewster, the collared lizard guy, came out. And it was at that point that Stephen started to pay attention to the glades. And I can remember specifically that he indicated that there were several glades on the west side of the lake, but that they'd been encroached upon and whatever. And I remember him pointing on the map to the location you all are speaking about as a potential very close experience to the glades that are present in the park. So it is somewhat fitting that Stephen had this idea that we would get to a point where we could learn from the glades and that we could do some sort of a specific presentation in that area. It didn't manifest until the current forestry grant came about, where we decided to advance more glade work. But as Scott mentioned, Stephen was involved with Steve Dickey and others to start on the beginnings of this demonstration glade area. So I agree with Sue too that, and Pat, that I'm not clear how a memorial can be specific to one place, as we've been to so many different areas with Stephen, but given that he used Glades as an advocacy during the mountain bike scenario, I think it sort of is fitting for the short term. I would like to say, though, that if you could expand the notion of what Stephen's memory might cultivate at other locations, perhaps his memorial can go beyond that one place. That's just my off-the-hip comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, any other comments, input? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes 4-0. Okay, item number 3, consideration of approval of fees for small and medium events. Now, this is something that we initiated some time ago when we started with Parks Rules and started working through fees for various things. Most of the fees that had existed for parks uses in the past had kind of seemed to evaporate over the previous few years. And so Scott has been doing a lot of research into other communities and how they address these issues. So I'll let him address this one specifically.
Thank you. You might recall several months ago, I brought some proposals for fees for things like camping and cabins, et cetera. Our rules do require that the commission set the fees. It's not something that the director does. We left a couple of things undecided at the time. The two that are before us in the current agenda item are small events, that's 25 people or less. That might be a small wedding, that type of thing. Or for medium events, 26 to 75 people, I proposed $100 for those sorts of events. And I should add that this is for the event itself. If we have to shut something down that is revenue generating, for instance, we would add that to the fee. So for instance, if somebody was using one of our shuttles, not that they use it, that we had a driver, for instance, we would have to charge for that because we're not deriving that revenue. So this is just fees for these small events. Now, having said this real quickly, I just want to point out the downside possibly to this is, do we want to charge a fee for something like a small wedding or whatnot? So that's not my decision, of course. I don't have a vote, but we needed to make a decision on this one way or another. I would state that even for those small events, we usually have to go out, make sure the park is cleaned up, and usually go back out afterwards to make sure it's not. So $50 even for something like a small wedding, I think is appropriate, because we do tend to spend at least an hour or so on events like that. So it's just recouping some of that cost. So again, the proposed motion would be $50 for small events and $100 for medium events.
Okay. So can I get a motion? The discussion will follow motion in a second. So can I get a motion?
Yeah. I move to set the price for small events, 25 people or less, at $50, and the price for medium events, 26 to 75 people, at $100.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I'm curious about the definition of event. My assumption would be for that, it would be booking something. So like you have the use of the pavilion and you're reserving that use for them. Because a lot of groups meet to ride bikes or hike or different activities where there's no reservation involved.
I think typically, and I know the way it was in the past, when I put on the Xterra race out there, if you were using a portion of the facility that could not be used by anybody else, then that was when the fees kicked in. If you're going out there and you're not trying to reserve a particular space, you've got a family gathering of 25 people, as long as you are not taking a part of the park that would normally be generating revenue or would be limit somebody else's use to it. That's what these are for. So if somebody wants to have a family picnic that they want to use the picnic pavilion and the area around it, then there should be a fee associated with that because nobody else is able to use it at that point in time. Okay. And then to Scott's point, there's certain preparation and cleanup that will always be done, have to be done following.
Yeah, I think
even a small one.
I think I'm used to the concept more as a reservation fee that you're reserving a particular area. Because I just find that word for events kind of confusing without any kind of definition of. Because if two people meet there to have a picnic, is that an event? Because it would be, and if without events being defined, that could be true.
I think we can ask Scott to go back and come up with some language around what defines that. I think the key was, and as he pointed out, that the current policy guidelines say that the commission sets the fees. So what he's trying to do is get our buy-in on what the fees for these types, this size of events, and then we can get him to better define it and how it's going to be applied.
Yeah, exclusive use of an area or part or something. I think of that word exclusive to me. So that,
And a reservation fee is not a bad term either, because that's the key, is when we have to get involved and reserve a space and then go out and at least make sure it's tidy and then check it out afterwards, that's when our involvement takes place, and somebody should have to at least offset that. This isn't a moneymaker, it just offsets the time we have in it. If, for instance, 25 people go out and play volleyball, no, they don't need a fee for that. If they are reserving a spot and they want it exclusive for their event, then they would.
Yeah, that's fine.
But what happens today? Where are we moving from? And, I mean, I see what we're moving to, but what are we moving from?
From people going out and doing whatever they want. I prepared applications for these things whenever we last addressed this issue. So I have applications where people call and ask, is there a permit for reserving a spot for a wedding? We do still request they fill out the form, but we haven't been charging a fee. But the reason for the form is so we know that we don't send our gardener out there with a weed eater right in the middle of somebody's wedding. So it's when you want to reserve something and know that those sorts of things are not going to happen. That's the key.
Yeah. And I think that to answer your question, the current state, or at least the more recent state that we're trying to move away from, is what there was no regulation, there was no fee, there was, like I said, when I put on the Xterra race, the check that I wrote to the park was the biggest one I wrote to anybody throughout the entire event, because I had to dedicate the space, I had to reserve the space, I had to pre-rent every campsite in the area that the event was going on so that we didn't disturb campers. That kind of disappeared over a period of time to where there were no fees charged for anything. The last few years that the Fat Tire Festival was put on, they paid no fee to the park for doing the event. So we're trying to get back to where we're not trying to make it onerous on anybody, but we need to recoup our expenses for the prep work that has to go into it, and the disruption to the normal operations of parks when an event like that goes on. So this is the first.
I have no problem with that part, but I would like to see a more significant definition of what that means, because I think if anybody just read that, they will come up with their own interpretation. So I say, I love the reservation term or exclusive use of something. Using those terms helps people understand that they are getting something for their money and that the average taxpayer is not having to pay to go out there and get a picnic.
Yes.
My concern.
And I would say that we typically, even now, and even once we, if this is voted for, if somebody wants to have a small wedding, and I mean small, they're going out and they're not expecting us to reserve a spot for them, then, and it's a very small group, then no, nothing's going to change. We're not going to go down there and grab them by the collar and demand $50. But if, usually what happens when it's a wedding, for instance, is they want it on the calendar and they want to know that it's going to be available for them on that day.
Yeah.
We used to have a deposit policy a long time ago, too, and there were deposits in place for the bigger events in case they trashed it or in case something horrible happened, and I don't know if we...
The form that I created does require...
does have the...
And when we get to the larger events, we'll address
Well,
that.
I agree with Mark. Having the word reservation attached to this makes an enormous difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it has what we call very poor optics. I mean, people who would show up and then be told that they had to pay a fee, that's not good optics.
Well, as a point of order, somebody could move to amend the motion to simply change the two words events to reservations.
Since I was the second, do I go first or does Jonathan go first?
And anybody can move to...
Anybody can move to amend it?
Amend a motion.
So small events by reservation.
So Jonathan, you want
Okay.
to amend your motion to say that?
Yeah, I move to amend the motion to change the word events to reservation or something along reservation fee in there.
In a second.
Then there has to be a vote on the amended motion,
Yeah.
and then you
Okay.
can vote on the motion.
We need a second on that.
Can I add one thing here? I don't think just replacing the word events with reservations quite clarifies the point.
No, I would say small event reservation fee
Okay,
or medium event reservation fee,
okay.
right? Okay.
Okay, do we need to amend that again?
Yeah, if you would just,
Okay, I move to amend the previous motion to say, I move to set the price for a small event reservation fee at $50 and the price for medium event reservation fees at $100.
Second.
And, for example, the yoga group that meets at Harmon Park, that can grow to 25 people. Do they have to pay a fee?
That is something that we have not been charging up till now, but we do have a rule that was implemented some time ago that says that anybody that is charging a fee for something in the park does need to get a permit. We haven't addressed it because it would come under one of these small events. The other possibility is for those sorts of class-type things, the commission could perhaps allow that to be within the discretion of the director to charge or not to charge a fee.
well, and I think primarily this fee structure is focused toward Lake Leatherwood, which is where these things tend to occur. The yoga class, which takes place on the concrete slab at Harmon Park, there's nothing else that occurs on the concrete slab at Harmon Park.
Yeah.
In reality, this would apply to all of the parks. A lot of the weddings,
Yeah,
for
I
instance,
know.
are not at Leatherwood, so it is one of those things that, again, we hit these fee issues kind of one at a time. There's another one we're going to address tonight for these larger events, and then we still haven't addressed the ball field events, so we could come back and address
Right.
classes for a fee at another time,
Yeah.
because that has not been addressed yet.
And I would agree that that needs more discussion.
Yeah.
Somebody's charging somebody to come and use public property that they
Yes.
should pay a fee to use it.
Yes. Yes, and as I said, there is a rule that says if you are doing so, you have to have a permit from us, but we've not been, because it hasn't been addressed enough, we haven't been enforcing it.
But I would say, as far as the yoga group, that would kill the yoga group. and they're all local people.
Yeah, I get it. And we're not looking, like I said, we're not looking for a way to make things onerous on people. What we're trying to do is recoup expenses and recoup lost other revenue when it affects other revenue-generating areas. So I think things like that, the fees can be waived upon, the discretion of the director.
I think that's a good idea.
He can make those judgments, especially when it's something like the yoga group. It's typically a very small group of people, and they're not charging a fee, correct?
They are. I mean, it may be that the instructor does get.
I don't know if they do or not, frankly.
Okay.
I'm glad to see them down there, and like I said, I'm not going to go interfere with 4 or 5 people doing yoga. Nor have they, and here's the key, is again, when they reserve something, and they did ask for permission to go down there, and I gladly granted it. And so this isn't one of these event reservations, really. I think we should reserve discussion of classes for a workshop, perhaps. I think the only other fee issue that will be left is we still have not even discussed whether there should be fees, for instance, for reserving the ball fields.
Yeah.
So there will be 2 fee issues that we're still going to have to discuss in a workshop.
Okay.
There's still a motion on the table, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
For the
It's
amendment.
the amend, I think we have to vote on
The
the
amend-
amending of the motion.
Right. So did we get a second on the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Can someone, will we read the motion as it the standing motion
Okay.
we're about
So
to vote
the
on?
motion, the amended motion is, I move to set the price for small event reservation fees, 25 people or less at $50, and the price for medium event reservation fees, 26 to 75 people at $100.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Unanimous. Okay. And with the direction that Scott will go back and provide a little more definition around some of the grayer areas, like the yoga classes. Okay, the next item. Direct the executive director to prepare and publish a request for proposals seeking an exclusive event promoter for large sporting events, those exceeding anticipated attendance of 75 people, and I would include in that these are primarily events that are utilizing the trails. So we have currently, I think, 4 or 5 requests for putting on events in the park. And the challenge with doing them individually is it consumes a lot of Scott's time vetting each of these groups, going through the process, reviewing applications, looking what their proposal is. In conversations that he and I had, I think that there's an opportunity to, through an RFP, establish a relationship with a single promoter that takes a lot of the day-to-day onerous work off of the director, puts the burden of direct management of these events on the promoter, potentially even taking over the Fat Tire Festival, which even though Parks and CAPC kind of jointly took ownership of, we've not been successful in finding a partner who will do it without a significant cost to us and to the CAPC, and that's not acceptable. We don't need to be putting on events with public money. I think there are, given the environment currently, especially in Northwest Arkansas, with the number of events and the large event promoters that are there, we have an opportunity to create a relationship that benefits us and helps us restrict the number of events that go on in the park. I don't think we need an event every other weekend through the summer in the park. There need to be a few large events that are well-managed, well-attended, that provide a benefit to the community as a whole through tourism. So that's really the intent of this, is to go out and seek that partner that'll work with us and work within the kind of boundaries that we establish for what the events will be.
And I would like to just add that we'll need to act quickly. I've already started on the request for proposals, hoping that this would be approved for tonight. I would have it finished by, say, early to mid next week. I could get it published, totally published within 2 weeks, and open them perhaps a week or two after that. So within a month, know who we're going to negotiate with, because we have events as early as May that different people have proposed. Already 4 or 5 events, and we're just getting started into this year. It's not something that, if we get to that number of events in the parks, we can't handle that with our staff. We need an outsider to do this. To properly vet them, make sure safety issues especially are dealt with. So it will be a very quick turnaround, and hopefully within a month we would have a person in place. A month to 6 weeks, we would have a promoter in place.
I'm sorry, I have to just interject in here. I know I'm out of order. What happens between soccer and other events that are already scheduled and a promoter comes in?
So I just said these are...
I think there has to be a better discussion than a late-hour discussion than this. We need a public hearing on this.
Pat, please. Okay. We clearly stated that these are events that involve the trails. They're mountain bike events, they're trail running events. We've already talked about exclusions for locally promoted small events. So this is an attempt to manage events in the park better and have better control over them and a single source control. So if we can get a motion and a second, then we'll go to comments and discussion.
So moved. Where is it? Let's see here. I move to direct the executive director to prepare and publish a request for proposals seeking an exclusive event promoter to promote large events as expeditiously as possible.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Pat.
I have a
Well-
question. Oh, sorry.
Did you have,
I'm sorry, I didn't see
I have
it.
a number
Yeah,
of
I didn't
questions. I have
Sorry, go ahead.
a number of questions here, which is, if what you are,
Pat, I can't hear you.
say again?
we can't hear you, Pat. You're going to need to get closer to the mic. I know,
No,
it's
but I can't.
it's tough.
No, we have to get way on the edge of our chair.
I might swallow it. What you described is not a promoter, but that's what you ask for. What you described that you want is a manager, which is, you didn't ask for that. So, the CAPC promotes, and based on that, I had a number of comments related to that. But first, don't we have to approve contracting for any such things? Don't we have to do that?
The commission, well, actually, no. I mean, the director has, under the current policy, the director has the authority to approve events. What the commission has the authority over is the fee structure. So now, as far as the distinction between promoter and manager, a manager would come in and manage an event if we were putting the event on. A promoter is bringing the event here. So what we're looking for is someone who's going to he will bring the races here. He will bring a downhill race or a cross-country race or a trail marathon or something like that. He will take care of all of the sponsorship. He will take care of all of the funding for the event, for the safety, and cleanup for it.
And how much is that anticipated to cost parks?
Okay,
It shouldn't cost parks anything. It should make us money.
right.
No, I'm asking how much it costs to either hire or contract with someone to do this. Do they do that for free?
Well, they're making money off of the event. An event promoter puts on an event to make money off of it. What we typically do, so if, let's say, I'll use the example again, when I put on the Xterra race, I put it on with the intent of making money. I collected all of the fees from the racers. I brought in the sponsorship dollars. I paid parks for the ability to use the park. And at the time, I paid quite a bit. I paid, like I said, I paid a use fee. I paid for campgrounds and cabins that couldn't be rented. I had to bring in all the sanitary facilities myself so that we wouldn't overload the park septic system. But I was doing it to make money off of the event.
Right.
And I paid parks a fee. So this is the same sort of relationship. They are going to be paying us a fee to put on the events, and that fee is part of what will be negotiated. They will be responsible for all of the costs associated with the event, just like any, I mean, the group that put on the enduro races last year, that's what they did. They produced the event, they paid all the expenses of the event, and they paid us a fee for the use of the park.
As far as I understand, all the big events like that, I can think of like that Fat Tire, all the races and things, that's always been whatever individual promoter that was promoting that event all over the place, whether it was part of an extra thing or not or whatever. Yeah, they came in individually. My question is, and I just don't know how this works either, I understand what promoters are. By establishing a relationship with a single promoter, is that what we're aiming to do?
Yes.
That's in this area, like the auditorium, I think, has tried to do that in the past, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I'm just throwing stuff out there. But I know Northwest Arkansas is full of promoters that do that.
Yes.
And if our motion is just to approve you putting out requests for proposals, I guess at some point we'll all get to talk about what's the criteria for choosing an individual. I don't know.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Please keep in mind the request for proposals is asking for people to explain to us by answering various questions what they have to offer to us for what we're eliciting the proposal. So in this case, how are you going to promote? How are you going to handle safety? How are we going to be paid? We're not going to accept something that's going to provide less money than we already get. Typically, we charge $10 per head for the large events. That's what's been done in the past. Well, we're probably not going to approve a contract that is not going to at least promise to pay us that much or more. Also, the request for proposals is a filtering process to figure which businesses might be able to pull this off for us. Mm-hmm. And then we negotiate with they're all rated by numbers, each response to those questions, that we pick the one that's most likely to work for us. And even then, we don't have a contract. We still have to negotiate the specifics of the terms. And then, yes, the commission would approve that contract. We might ask for a special meeting on it just because of the timing of it. And one of the biggest things these people would be doing would be managing the events. If we have a soccer event, as has been suggested, for instance, part of the management of their event is going to be they're going to have to pick a date that there's not some other event already on the calendar. So it's not going to be something where this company we hire wants to do an event on July 4th, and so we're going to kick someone else out of the park that got there first. We are still going to handle it through a more or less first come, first serve sign-up process. But we're going to have somebody that can handle all of the day in and day out. There's things, there's so many details, getting insurance certificates, getting sponsors, getting the fire department involved so they're there to respond if there's an emergency. All of that takes an enormous amount of time.
And staff, that's the big thing.
Exactly.
I see is the staff.
And so this is someone who would handle all of that.
So, I definitely don't think parks should be putting on events, so I don't think that should fall on parks. The part of this I don't get, I'm used to the idea of a promoter who's part of the mountain bike community and he puts on a mountain bike event, and someone else may be part of the running community and they put on a running event. I don't get this idea of having one person do it all. I don't quite see how that works and how they would necessarily have those connections to the necessary communities.
Well, I think we're in a slightly different environment than there used to be, and things have changed, especially in Northwest Arkansas. If you look at the size and the scope of the events, that are being put on now, and they're being put on very professionally because they are organizations that is all they do. And they do multiple different events. I mean, Bruce Dunn, who we were originally negotiating with to put on the Fat Tire Festival, does mountain bike races, road bike races, triathlons, duathlons, and marathons, and half marathons. So there are people out there that do all of them and are capable of doing all of them.
Yeah, I don't think any longer the individual with the interest is who's doing it. Like you said, we've gotten away from that. That's why Fat Tire Festival was no longer able to really maintain through this transition in the way things are done now. It takes too much time, staff, money, logistics for these special interest individuals to do it. It takes the big promoting companies, I think.
And I also would like to point out, you should all understand, including the public, when Mr. Rulli and I have met even today, and we were talking about the request for proposals that I've already started putting together, he made it clear that it excludes such things as the athletic events, such as soccer. In other words, those sorts of events, those are self-sustaining. There's usually a league that does that. We don't need somebody coming in and doing that. These are the out-of-the-ordinary events.
Special events.
Like the Fat Tire Festival that hasn't happened for a few years, but that was a good example of something that takes a huge amount of time. Those are the events that we're talking about, not soccer, not, those sorts of events. Not even if somebody wanted to do, I don't know, go out there and do a, little volleyball tournament or something. No, not those. The big events that are hundreds of people.
Well, for instance, we had something called the Coalescence Festival years ago, a good example of why a professional promoter does a better job. The Coalescence Festival was a music, outdoor, tie-dye, happy, yoga, peace, love, very nice event. Lots of people came, but parks didn't get their money because the promoters didn't collect the money properly. They ended up having lots of problems collecting their money from their people, and it was a mess. And they were just individuals who wanted to throw together this event. They weren't professional promoters. And I remember at the time thinking, gosh, we all learned a lesson from that one. But you just don't know. When they gave us a deposit, the parks did keep the deposit, but we didn't get the full amount.
But I want to jump in here because I've heard it like 10 different ways here right now, and I just want to be clear that I'm thinking what you're saying here. We're trying to find a person that if somebody like Fat Tire came in and said, we want to do a downhill run or something here, and we're going to register 1,000 people on this stuff.
Yes.
We're going to turn it over to these people and say they manage all of our events here, and you'll have to work with them and not with our park people.
Yes.
Is that what we're looking for?
Well,
somebody to manage that? Or it's two different things for that versus we want somebody to go promote different events for us all over and do the registration and do all that kind of stuff, because then they become sort of the event planner, if you will. I mean, and then I heard you say that in May we have something coming up. So are they promoting the event? Or are we promoting the event? Or
So
are they managing?
and I guess we're getting a little stuck on semantics. What we're using promoter for is the person that is putting on the race. So we're not looking to hire somebody to come in and oversee somebody else. What we're trying to do is eliminate the number of individuals who are coming in and asking to do events in the park.
Okay.
The people that we're looking at do multiple events already. And so they would have the ability to come to us with a portfolio of event types that they want to put on in the park. A downhill enduro race, a cross-country race, a marathon,
Okay, and
that sort of thing.
And so what their proposal would be to us is we propose that we will provide you with 5 events in the next 12 months with this estimated number of people in each event, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And then we will award a contract to them to promote their events, and we would, to the exclusion of anybody else want to promote events, because we can only have so many.
Right.
Okay, so now I clearly understand.
Yeah,
Thank
those big events, not a soccer jamboree
Right.
or a,
I absolutely get that. Okay.
yeah.
Is it,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So I know when there's financial interests, they tend to take over parks. So,
Yes.
I mean, someone comes in, they're making money, they want to do more of it. And they tend to have a big voice and tend to drown out the quieter uses of the park and the less organized use of the park. So how do we restrict this and make sure this doesn't grow and we don't end up with more events that displace the regular users than what we originally intended?
Well, the whole point, and I will tell you that in past years, in pre-COVID, there were multiple events and large events every year.
Yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't have any. I just want to make sure we get to control how many, as a community, we get to control how many we
Well,
want.
that's the point of doing a contract.
Yeah, that is-
We have ultimate control of the events.
That was-
And by going through a single source, we have more direct control over how they put the events on.
And we have veto authority over that.
Okay, but, I mean,
Pat, I'm
someone-
sorry,
oh,
Pat.
Sue raised an excellent issue here, which is that suggests to me that we need to decide how many events there are going to be that lock up, for example, Leatherwood Park, which has happened before.
Yes.
There's limited parking there. It's been effectively where you can't go to the park on a weekend sometimes. It's just not, it's taken over. So we have to look for a balance here, is what Sue is saying. So,
Sorry.
And that's precisely what we're talking about. We're talking about finding a balance and being able to limit the number of events and have them very well-managed events.
well, how do we do that?
Pardon?
How do we do that?
You do that through the contract.
No.
How do you do,
How do we do that? I'm assuming that will be the commission's decision. as to how-
Yes.
you're going to have to get a look, because
The commission's decision as to how many events you're going to have in the coming year.
yes,
So we have to decide that. Is that true?
we do,
Yes.
but not right now. That's part of the negotiation. See that, and trust me, I struggle with this. Arkansas law around RFPs, the request for proposal is very generic. It is based on certain qualification criteria, has nothing to do with a fee structure or any contract terms. The contract comes after the RFP is completed and a successful respondent has been selected. So the initial step is put out the RFP and see if we get an acceptable response from somebody who we feel comfortable is going to be able to do this appropriately. Then through the contract negotiations, we define how many events that is, what they are, when they can be.
That's contrary to every government contracting
Honestly,
concept in the world.
I have struggled
I've never
with
heard
this.
anything as absurd as that.
It is.
References backwards.
Really, it is just,
Yeah.
I mean,
I still don't get the need for this contract, because if there's a professional promoter who wants to put on an event at Leatherwood Park, they can still come to the park and apply. So I don't get the point of this contract. If they're not coming to us, say we want to put on an event, what's the point of it?
Okay.
I don't,
We'll go back to it's the whole objective here is to have a single source that we're dealing with. It makes it far easier to manage, far easier to control, and understand quality. We get people coming to us that have never put on an event here before, and that's what half of these are that we have current requests for. It takes a great deal of due diligence, and even then, you don't really know how they're going to perform. When they get here, you don't know what kind of control they're going to have over their event. So this affords us the ability to better manage that in the park.
and have planning, I mean, in future planning even,
Right.
like we're going to know early when this is going to
But
happen.
I still don't get why parks can't say to them, we're concerned about your ability to put on this event. Can you bring in some expertise to put on your event, and then we'll approve it?
that's what
And
we
put their
have
money from
done.
them on finding somebody.
I think we have done that, and that's what the past was like. I see this as something worth trying it this way because it makes more sense of how the modern promotion world is working, whereas that past way, it did take a lot of time and effort to vet the people and the risk you took over these promoters that weren't good. They are good, they're not good, you don't know. So I don't know, to me, we're not locked in forever. We don't know, we won't know how many events until we see if someone says, I can do 3 pony races. No, we don't want that guy, whatever. I don't think until we see those, we won't even know
And let me explain the process a little bit.
I don't know,
Request
yeah.
for proposals is people responding to specific questions. These are questions like, how do you propose to handle safety or medical emergencies? And they'll explain, we'll have the fire department on hold, or we'll have this or that. How do you plan on promoting this event? What sorts of sponsors do you anticipate? These are the types of questions we ask. We then have a committee of, we'll probably have 3, one or more commissioners could be on that. If there were more than one, it would be a public meeting. But at any rate, at least one of the commissioners can and should be on the committee or on the group that reads these responses and rates them. After that, we pick somebody that we think will work for us to handle this. Now we have to negotiate the contract. And until we do that, it's not like a bid where build this building for me and here's the plans and specifications, and we can get to the lowest dollar. This is, show us what you have for us to be able to promote these events, because we need somebody that has sponsors that they know. We need somebody that has these events and knows how to handle the safety issues. We need somebody that has a promotional network that they can advertise better than we can. So all of these are things that we're trying to get people to show us what they have to offer us, and then we pick the company that we want to negotiate with first. In fact, the rules that apply are, if we can't come to an agreement with that person, we go on to the next person. And so all we're asking for at this point is to put the request for proposals together, rate them, see then if we can negotiate a contract, and then, yes, that has to be approved by the commission. So at this point, it's a matter of gathering our information to try to find somebody, if we can, to do this for us. We may not be able to find somebody that's, like in the ones we did for the engineers, we only had one bidder. Unfortunately, it was a good firm. But the point is, if it wasn't, we would have washed our hands and gone home and, come up with a different way of doing it.
Yes, Pat?
How many events, scheduled events, took place out at Lake Leatherwood last year?
Well, last year was a COVID year. I know we did 2 half marathons. We did, it's a different type of event, but we did a plant walk with Bo Brown.
Yeah. Athletic events. How many enduros did we have?
Any other athletic events? Those were the only 2, I think, but it was because of COVID. The mayor had a...
Have you
the events were prohibited.
At last summer, they were still prohibited, so they took place. They just took place at Passion Play rather than in Leatherwood.
Well, I guess what I'm looking for is how much money comes to parks from such events? Because there's not, I see nothing in the ledger that shows income
That's
from.
because they're
Well, I've gone back and back, not just last year. And I don't see anything really entered as far as income from events.
No, and nor do I, and it was a different executive director at the time.
I understand that.
And my understanding is a fee wasn't being charged at the time, which to me was somewhat of a travesty to tie up a park like we did. The events, the direction we were heading when I started to get requests this year is it was going to be $10 per head. Now that's with us just providing the venue and them doing virtually everything else. So we provide a venue, yes, the grass is mowed, the trails are clean and well maintained, etc. But you give us $10 per participant, and it's your event. If they make $1 million off of that, that's fine, but we get our $10 per participant. And I can't envision us doing a contract without at least that range of, there might be other considerations, but I'm envisioning it's going to be a similar sort of a structure, just somebody else managing it. If at this time of the year, I've already gotten requests for, I think it's actually 5 athletic events for this year, and we're just getting started.
And did they tell you how many participants or how many people they would anticipate coming?
Yes, each of the ones that have approached me, they're looking at anywhere from 150 to 250 people.
That's not a bundle of money for parks.
No, it's not, but it's also, it's not an abundance of money, but it's also not an abundance of effort. In other words,
But it's
if I had to manage,
It's wear and tear on the park,
Amen.
and there's maintenance, maintenance to do. I've never been out there after an event that there wasn't a whole lot of work that needed to be done.
well, and that's a matter of better management as well, because the contracts that we have require the event promoter to do complete cleanup by the end of the next business day.
And it's not, I will disagree with you, Pat, because I put on the exterior for 3 years, 13, 14, and 15. If I recall correctly, the fees that I paid the park were generally in the $1,500 to $1,700 range, and I was responsible for cleaning everything up. I would spend as much time after the event making sure that there was not a thing left on the trails as I did before the event setting it up. The problem in the recent past is it hasn't been required, and we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get to a point where we can put on events in the park, which is part of the mission, and it clearly
It's
states.
not
that
part of the mission. We voted that
Okay.
tax to you guys.
All
We
right.
voted that tax
Pat,
for us, not for
Pat, you
events.
need to stop.
Shame.
Stop.
Shame on you. Shame.
Mission statement, last paragraph. In fulfilling this mission, the Commission and its director will be constantly alert to new opportunities to make public parks an essential component of the tourism economy, a dominant factor in the quality of life and a leader in public partnerships, and valued contributor to the educational opportunities of Eureka Springs.
We are parks
There have
and recreation.
always
We
been-
are not parks and tourism. Shame
There
on
have
you.
always been events. As long as I've been around here, there have been events that have taken place in the parks. What we're trying to do is find a better way to manage it to our benefit. That's the objective here.
Well, how does that fit with the responsibility? How does that mesh with this responsibility for protecting and preserving out at the park? We haven't yet ever decided to dedicate any part of that park to an undisturbed area. We have yet to see that happen.
I don't see that as
But-
it's,
Okay, well, just erase that tape.
That's not
But
preservation.
well, it is, say what, Ruth?
I don't know, is preservation, conservation, I want, the words confuse me sometimes, I don't know. When you're saying undisturbed part of the park, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I was just thinking out loud probably.
People come here because it's beautiful here. People come here, I think, largely drawn by the natural environment. That is the goose that lays the golden egg here. Now, what are we doing to avoid killing the goose? Mm-hmm. So that would be my question in regard. I'm not arguing against events. I'm arguing for establishing and maintaining some quality out at Lake Leatherwood. If you read history on the lake and on the Parks Commission, you will see that in, a time when it was said that people came here for the serenity and beauty of the lake and the park. I don't think that's really the case anymore, or that's not a priority here that I hear to maintain, offer people some peaceful, natural serenity. That is a priceless item.
okay,
That is a priceless item.
but we're getting off topic.
Yes.
Not really, not really.
It is. So
From the,
what is in front of
the
us
motion,
is
yes.
how we manage events in the park. The park is a recreational facility. When it was deeded over to the city, the deed stipulates that it will always remain a public facility.
Yes.
So we're not debating whether we're setting aside. I mean, it's 1,600 acres. And we're talking about the use of the trails that exist in there right now. We're not talking about going and building anything new or creating any more trails. We're talking about the use of the facilities right now, which is a use that's been going on. We're just trying to establish a better way to manage it so that we get a better return on it.
And you can manage the types of things you're talking about now, whether we have an outside manager or promoter, or whether it's the executive director doing it. You can put limits on the number of those types of events or where they take place. That's regardless of who's managing it. This is a matter of, do we do it in-house, which we don't have the resources to. I can't even imagine having to do this if we were having even just 4 or 5 events on top of everything else we have to do. But if we have an outside person who's doing it, we get the same amount of money, but they're doing the work. That's what we're focusing on. This, in reality, gives the commission a little, at least the opportunity to build into it some additional controls that you may want, because keep in mind, until we have a contract approved, this isn't a done deal. The request for proposals is just trying to identify who we would negotiate with. We may not find anybody that's willing to do it, but it's worth a try, because I can't do it with the staff I've got.
It's just giving us an option.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can limit, okay, we want X number of events a year.
I'm not following this. You're saying the choice is between you doing it and one promoter. To me, the choice should be between having several promoters doing different events and having one promoter do all the events. It shouldn't be falling in-house either way.
Well, but it still takes effort.
Well, yes, but even if we have one promoter that's still going to take effort, they still need to be watched. They still need to be followed up on what they're doing. That doesn't change because there's one promoter. And I don't get,
What is the harm in getting proposals back and seeing what somebody offers us? Because we
don't even know.
We might get nothing. We might get 1 or 2 that both offer all kinds of positive things for our parks and are willing to do only 5. So we might get somebody who says, no, we don't want to be limited to the number we can do. We don't, or what time we can do it. We don't know. The only thing that we're yay vote on this is we get a proposal and we find out what's out there.
We have options.
It gives us an option.
Yeah.
And we may not take any of them. We may say, that doesn't do us any good once we get them. It doesn't say how many. We're not asking them. I assume, though, we are going to give them a friend. I'm like, I don't want somebody to waste their time when we're never going to allow them to do 10 events or what, so I'm assuming one of the questions in the proposal is,
here's the list of what we're looking for. And as far as the way because I started writing it, and as far as the number of events, what I stated was a minimum of 3 events in 2022. And at least, again, this is just the first shot at it. I said up to 10 events in the future. Maybe you as a commission want to say up to 5 events, up to 7 events. That's a number. Give me the number.
Well, that's hard to balance, too. Things like, I think as a business owner, I miss the Fat Tire Festival.
Yeah.
That was a great weekend in the summer where people were here to have fun. There were very positive energy. They shopped, they ate, they drank lots of beer.
Yeah.
They were, and there are people that came with them tended to be outdoor people, too. They were appreciating our outdoors while they were here. I really liked it. So if I'm a business owner, I miss having some big events. But yeah, how many is too many? I'm not really sure. The balance is hard to find.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
and that's the type of tough decision that you as a commission make. Mm-hmm. So I can get this out in draft form by mid next week, email it to everybody, let them see where we're going. I'll probably just email the questions. The rest of it's more or less boilerplate, or I can highlight them. So, send you the whole document, but I'll highlight them. And then, worst case, we have a workshop and we tweak it before I send it out. But at this point, we're looking for information. Is there somebody out there that can do this for us? Because we don't have the staff that can handle promoting even 1 or 2 events a year. much less 5, 7.
Or even understanding all the pitfalls.
Right.
I mean, these people know the pitfalls. They've been doing it forever, we hope, or for a long
Right.
time, and they understand things that we don't even know to ask for.
Right.
So I see no harm in finding out who's out there.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to try. Like I said, we can always not do it.
Right.
Gathering information.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt to put the RFP out.
Right.
And if anything, it gives us more information if we do wind up going with individuals.
Right.
So,
The other option is I start approving these events
yeah.
and spending a lot of time doing that I
Yeah.
could be spending doing on other things.
Okay.
Mark, the answer to your question is, so it was said in a meeting, earlier in this meeting, that the board, the commission had approved money for the bridge. That was put in a budget with just, multiple items. It was just snuck in there, wasn't highlighted. We weren't told we were approving this. So I want to know what I'm voting for. I want to know that I have that information. I don't want things snuck by me. And, this, we got this, before tonight, we had this little bit of information on this. I just don't have a comfort level that if we go down that path, so we're not going to get told at some point, oh, you approved this already, we're going to go ahead with the contract because you approved it.
Okay, that's fine.
And I want to make sure
you-
that we keep that, have that
And
control.
you vote your convictions.
Okay.
When the vote, we have a motion, we have a second. So unless there's anything else material in the discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
Okay. It passes 4-2.
No, I got it.
Okay. Item number 5, discussion is considering reestablishing a ball field committee. So Ruth, I think you brought this up.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to establish a ball field committee
Well,
with,
it's-
no?
Actually, well, you weren't here, that's right. We amended the agenda. It's actually not an item to vote on.
I wondered about that because it didn't seem like it should
Ad
be.
hoc committees are.
And it's existed
there
before.
for you. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
So I just need to make it clear that I'm willing to be the commissioner.
So what is the purpose of an ad hoc ball field committee?
The purpose before, which I still see is relevant, and I'm going to add on to that. The purpose before was just to give the people using Lake Leatherwood as a ball field for the organized kids soccer leagues, for the adult groups that get together and play, a way to control themselves with each other, for one thing, to be able to communicate with each other. It was management of their own, it wasn't necessarily just for us, it was for them too. It helped all of us, and I say us because I was also one of the people that used the field with my kids,
Right.
et cetera. And it was a way of keep coordinating with each other and making sure we understood what the ball field needed from Parks, what Parks needed from us, et cetera. Communication, why it got separated from Lake Leatherwood itself, because the ball fields had the concession stand and the booster club and all the volunteers from the soccer and what used to be the Youth Advisory Sports Council, all those things. They were doing all these different things and putting them together in one committee that could communicate and coordinate with Parks was why it existed. I don't see as many organizations using the ball fields now as there was back then. I still think, though, the ability to coordinate those uses of the park and make sure that they get, communicated to Parks and Parks back to them, I think is still necessary. So I think it's time. There's a lot of feedback I get from people that they don't understand what's happening in Parks and does it affect the ball fields, how does it affect the ball fields, and I feel like it'd just be a way for these people to get together and explain to each other how they're using it, how they want to use it, and then coordinate with the commission. I'm not sure if I'm not even saying that right, but
Yeah.
If I may, I
and
actually...
planning, it's a planning issue, basically. It's knowing what's going on. We know what they're doing, they know what we're doing, and we can...
When I was the groundskeeper out at Lake Leatherwood, I actually attended those ball field committee meetings, and they were actually helpful for both sides, because it wasn't like we were planning anything, but we were coordinating events, I mean, I remember one time I went out there, I was mowing the lawn, the field, and all of a sudden there's all these kids playing ball around me, and they were about to have a game. I mean, things like that. There was a lack of scheduling, lack of coordination. If there were problems like, they kept leaving the gates open and people would drive in and park on the grass. It was an opportunity for parks to share issues with the users and vice versa, make sure we had things coordinated. So it wasn't like other planning committees, like if we were to have a committee to plan how are we going to restore Basin Park, different type of a situation. This actually was helpful for parks, not just for the users of the field.
But I think if it's a matter of, so typically an ad hoc committee is going to be stood up for a specific purpose, and to have a set of objectives and clear goals and deliverables to the commission. This sounds more like the users out there need to get together and coordinate among themselves, and they can provide feedback to Scott. It doesn't have to be technically a committee established by the commission. This is a group of the users, just as though you were going to have a soccer league, coordinating their uses together and being able to get with Scott to make sure that nobody's stepping on anybody else's toes.
I don't know. I don't really know that the lack of officialness, if that's the right word, would affect their ability to feel like, not just feel, but to actually to affect some change where they do coordinate with each other and they do make plans and do coordinate. I don't know if they're a citizens users group. Do they need to have the ability to feel they can always communicate on an official level? Do they feel like they have? I don't know. I'm not really sure.
But I don't
Just
know
saying
that they
out
need to
loud.
communicate with the commission. An ad hoc committee is a function of the commission.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like what they need to be able to do is develop a channel for communicating with the director.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm certainly available for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can set a monthly meeting. Maybe we're talking semantics, but whether we call it a committee or it's just a planning group, I'm happy to set a time once a month where we meet with the users of the ball field and address those issues.
I think that's a good place to start, and if that doesn't work, then we
Then we'll
try
come back
find
and
it.
we'll
Yeah,
discuss
that's
it.
the easiest place to start. That makes sense. I agree.
Okay.
Can we take a break, go to the bathroom?
Yes, we can take a break.
I like to keep it ice cold. I forgot
Yeah.
from last time.
Well,
My feet are cold now.
it's either cold or it's hot.
Well, it felt good when I got here. I took my mother to the doctor's and then to the store, and she took forever at Hearts. I'm sorry, that was what was delaying me. The snow's coming. She was worried about buying enough groceries. I said, Mom, I got to go. It's 5:30. I got to go. But I won't have any milk. I said, Mom, it's 2 days. 1 day. Oh, she'll be okay. Anyway, but she's freezing to death in the store because she's old. We got in the car, and to drive her home, she lives behind Brighton Ridge on Deer Lane. It's not that far. He said, go turn the car and turn on the heat. So, and I should know better. I hear I have this vest, I got sweatpants on, I've been working at Sparky's. So I crank up the heat to 85, and I close all the windows, and I get her in there. It's like, oh, and I drive home. Oh, hurry. How fast can I get home? And then the other bad thing I do, which is just, she smokes cigarettes, but only when she's with other people. She's afraid she'll burn the place down. She's old. She's developed this new attitude towards, I'm never going to try to quit smoking again. I'm 85, and I've been through a lot of hell physically. I love to smoke once in a while. I want to do it. So I let her smoke in my car. It's an old car. It'll never be the same, though. It's crazy. So she lit up a cigarette, too. So it makes me drive
With the heat.
fast.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yes.
I always text my brother afterwards because we share the same. He lets her smoke in his car, too, down in Houston. Sometimes I have to pull over and get out of the car. Mom, I'm going to pull over and get out of the car. Today, she's in store walking on this lane. Especially when you're in a hurry.
Are the finance committees, are they standing committees always?
I knew.
I don't know if you can we coordinate that. I don't know if you can coordinate that. Yeah, I don't know if we're supposed to be discussing this. But I think you should do what you feel like doing. Okay.
I understand now what you said. I shouldn't have said it.
I'm back. I would think somebody has to be coordinating the schedule for that. 3 teams.
Yeah.
Okay, we are back. We can get through the rest of this fairly quickly. Okay, election of officers. This is not going to follow a motion process. This is purely nominations. Anyone can nominate anybody. You can nominate yourself, which is also known as volunteering. If you are nominated and you don't feel like you can fulfill the duties of the position, you can turn down the nomination. Once all nominations are finished for a given position, we will hold the voting. Everyone gets 1 vote. They're all yes votes. So let's say there are 3 nominees for chair. We will hold a round of votes. Scott will take care of the tallying because he's not going to be voting. He will ask for votes in favor of nominee number 1, votes in favor of nominee number 2, votes in favor of nominee number 3. There are no votes. There are no abstentions. We're all going to be voting on who's going to be in the officer positions. If no one receives the majority of the votes, 4 votes, on the first round, then the person with the lowest vote will drop off. The highest 2 will go to a second round of voting, and we'll do the same thing again. The positions that we're filling are chair, vice chair, and secretary. The standing commissions will be appointed based on volunteers. Once we get done with that, they won't be voted on. Okay? So we will start with item number 6, which is the position of chair of the Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission, and I will open the floor to nominations.
I'm torn between saying this. I would volunteer if no one wanted my longevity on the commission versus some of the new people. I have served as chair for part of a year before. It was 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. I don't know that if someone else is dying to do it, though, don't let me feel like I'm taking something you want to try away. But it's just for one year, so.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, so did you volunteer or were you nominated?
I nominate Ruth, I guess.
Okay, very well.
She's volunteering.
Any other nominations?
Okay.
I nominate Sue.
Okay.
Any more? Okay, so we have two nominees, Ruth Hager and Sue Hubbard. Scott, do you want to conduct the vote?
Very well. All of those casting a vote for Ruth Hager, please signify by saying aye.
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 So there are 3 for Ruth. Those wishing to cast a vote for Sue, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Then Ruth Hagar is the chair by a vote of 3 to 2.
Okay,
Okay.
so the position of vice chair,
Point of order, though?
Yes.
I believe the bylaws require Ruth to take over at this point. Is that correct?
After all the
well,
elections, or just?
yes, actually. Well, no, the way that it's written is that
As-
once the vote for the chair is done. So the floor is yours.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if
no,
it was
no,
after all
you're
the
right.
elections or after the actual one, so. Okay, so nominations for the position of vice chair. Do I have nominations?
Yeah, I will definitely be considered for that. Just know I'm currently secretary, so that would also be a position that would need to be filled,
Well,
if I'm nominated, yeah.
So we have one nomination for Sue, made by Mark. Any further nominations?
I nominate Kevin. I don't know
Okay.
if you're interested.
Any further nominations?
No further nominations? Scott, you can do the vote.
Okay, very well. All of those casting a vote for Sue as vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I hear one vote. Is that all? Very well. Those casting a vote for Kevin, please signify by saying aye.
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 That's 3. Was there a vote by?
I did not make the vote. I'm abstaining.
Oh, okay. I heard 3.
Yeah.
Did you
I'm
vote,
sorry, 3.
Mr. Rulli?
Yes, 3, I heard
Okay.
3.
It was myself, Mark, and Ruth, I believe.
Okay, so 3. Very well. In that event, the vice chair is Kevin Rulli. Finally, we have secretary.
Do I have nominations for the position of secretary?
Here's where I'll nominate Sue.
Now, Sue.
Sue, do you want to do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job. I'll nominate Sue, too.
A second? You don't have to second.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
We don't
Okay.
need a second.
Don't need,
And were there any other
I
nominations?
just realized you don't have to.
I'll nominate Jonathan.
Any other nominations? So we have John-
One moment, please. That was Jonathan being nominated by
Yes.
Kevin.
By Kevin.
Any further nominations? In that event, all of those casting a vote for Sue as the secretary, please signify by saying aye.
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 I heard 3 votes, is that correct?
On me,
Four
for
votes?
myself.
Okay. Perhaps moot at this point, but those casting a vote for Jonathan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
In that event, we have Sue as the secretary. Just to summarize, the new chair is Ruth. The vice chair is Kevin. The secretary is Sue.
Okay, thank you, Scott. We didn't get a lot of a variety in the new selection, but we all have experience, so we should make it good. The new commissioners hopefully will be,
I got some
Next
learning.
I'll keep it for a few days in case you're...
okay. we have to deal with standing committees, grievance and finance. This comes under new business item number nine. We need to appoint commissioners to the standing committees. So we have the grievance committee and the finance committee.
Yep.
And I don't remember, do we have to have two commissioners? No, just one.
No, we have two on each one.
Two on each one, okay, so two on each one. So, is this done by a process of nomination also? No, this is
Where's this?
volunteer, isn't it?
Volunteers.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
About what these committees do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the grievance committee is actually defined in the ordinance.
Okay.
And it is a means for any individual who has a grievance against parks
Okay.
to come to. The two grievance committee members are to listen to the grievance,
Okay.
do any due diligence that is required around it, and come to the Parks Commission
And then
as a
present it to
whole
the commission?
and make a recommendation for
Okay.
action or no action. The Finance Committee, which we stood up for the first time last year, because of the amount of work that needed to go on to get the books in order and get the finances, the financial reporting under control. I think the role of the Finance Committee is frankly ill-defined. That all the policy manual does is say that there has to be a Finance Committee. So the way we did it last year was to kind of provide a second set of eyes, if you will, for Scott, someone to poke holes in things and ask questions as he was working towards getting the books in order.
Okay.
And addressing any issues that came up from the Legislative Audit Committee. So it is really, I mean, it's the executive director's responsibility to take care of the finances and to report the finances to the commission as a whole. The way the Finance Committee functioned last year, like I said, was a review to sit down with Scott, make sure that they were comfortable with what he was presenting so that they could come to the commission as a whole and report on it on a quarterly basis and provide assurances that what we were getting it was correct.
Okay.
If I may,
Yes,
the
Pat?
bylaws don't say anything about standing committees, but
Well, it
Well,
defines
they
what a
don't-
standing committee is. It
yeah,
does
but
not.
they don't specify. But the policy manual does specify.
Yes.
And what the policy manual specifies is ethics and grievance. That's one. Finance and stewardship, that's two. And reports and long-range planning. I would suggest that if we're going to, we already have, is finance already populated at this point?
Not yet.
No, that's what we're talking about right now.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that we appoint for all three required, out of the policy manual.
Well, so we actually discussed that and voted on that last year and decided that because there is actually, there's no description of what any of those are. So if you
Right.
can tell me what ethics and grievance is supposed to do, other than the grievance process that's required by the ordinance, okay? Long-range planning, the planning function is clearly specified as part of what the executive director is supposed to do and present to the commission. So we felt there wasn't really a need for that, to have a standing committee to do that as well. Finance was the most important one, and so that was the one that we populated along with the grievance.
See, I think stewardship is important.
I always assume, I assumed it implied financial stewardship of the reports, the integrity of the reports, the integrity of the reporting about the finances between the director. I don't know, what do you interpret stewardship to mean, Pat?
Well, I think what I think about it is not relevant to this discussion.
Okay.
So,
But because it is the same as, I mean, it's finance and stewardship. So we're just, I mean, essentially that's what we're saying, is that the committee's focus is supposed to be on financial.
taking care of, being stewards of the money.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a degree in accounting, so I'd like to volunteer for the finance.
I was thinking that might be a
Yay.
good idea.
I'm glad to hear that, Mark. That's a good idea.
I will be putting your number on speed dial.
Yes.
I don't do accounting, but I have a degree in it, so I do understand it.
So that's Mark. So I think that sounds great. And we need a second one.
I don't know how much help I could really be, but I can.
Well, you served on the chamber, right?
I did.
And another, so
I
you're-
was in the chamber for 8 months. It wasn't a very long period
are
of
you,
time,
and have you read budgets before and financials and things?
but somewhat. I'm willing to learn all of it.
There you go.
Well,
So-
I would put myself forward for this. I would like to be considered because I have spent considerable time and energy looking through, studying and analyzing in various ways parks general ledgers. I have suggested last year, I think, Kevin will remember, I suggested a chart of account structure that I thought would meet some of the needs that needed to be met. So I have a strong interest in
Oh, good. I agree. I was waiting for you to speak up and say that. I'm glad you did.
I'm
But
just- yeah.
do we have to limit it to 2? Do you know, Kevin? Can it be 3?
I don't know that there's any advantage to,
I would certainly defer to the more expertise here.
Okay.
So
Okay. So it would be Pat Costner and Mark Ingram will be our Finance and Stewardship Committee. And then we have the Grievance Committee, Grievance and Ethics. Yeah, there aren't. Jonathan, you want to volunteer for something?
well,
That's not the one, huh?
Jonathan. Well, yes, let's put Jonathan on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will fill the other one. We should have a seventh commissioner by the next meeting, and we can assign that to that person when we
Okay.
get here.
That sounds great. Jonathan and Kevin, Grievance Committee. Okay.
So,
That's all that's in the business,
yeah,
right?
the last item we have.
Oh, I missed the change in the
yeah,
agenda, right?
it was an amendment. We're going to approve the letter to Cornerstone
Oh,
Bank.
yes, thank you.
Changing
I read that.
the signature cards. We're going to kind of jumpstart that process.
Yes.
So Scott has the letter form. He's going to fill in the names that are going to be removed. Did Nikki gave you the names that were on it?
No, not yet.
Okay, it was the two of us, Scott Barden and Dave Hartman. So Scott Barden and Dave Hartman need to come off the signature cards. And then we stay on. Pat Costner and Mark Ingram get added to the signature cards. So this is, every check that Parks writes has two signatures on it. One is Scott's, one is one of the commissioners. Typically, it's the chair. If the chair is not available, it goes to one of the other people who have signature authority. And again, last year as we were going through this, because in previous years, I guess there were various times that everybody on the commission had signature authority.
Yes, there
Which I
was.
didn't think was a great idea. So
Right.
we limited it to chair, vice chair, and the two finance committee members. So
So we're ready for a motion to,
if Scott will read the letter out in full, then we will take a motion in a second to approve the letter, because this letter has to go to Cornerstone Bank, and it has to be recorded in the minutes as having
Right.
been voted on. So,
And Ruth, before you leave tonight, I'll need your signature on that.
okay.
February 15, 2022, Cornerstone Bank, P.O. Box 309, Eureka Springs, Arkansas, 72632. Ray, changes to check signing list for Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission. To whom it may concern, we request that the following names be removed from our check signing list: Scott Barden, David Hartman, we request the following names be added: Pat Costner, Mark Ingram. Thank you. Scott Miskell, Director, Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission. Ruth Hager, Chair, Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission.
May I ask, we say Cornerstone, but do they officially go by CS Bank
They do.
now?
They do, it is,
Good,
yes.
good point. Yes, thank you.
We still call it Bank of Eureka Springs.
Having read that into the record, I could type these names in the morning and bring it by. Or would you be at the restaurant? Do we have a clean copy?
Yeah,
Is that-
let's do
Very
that.
well.
That's fine.
And then we'll get it to the bank. Well, they're going to want our minutes, so we'll have to wait
Right.
until.
Yeah, we'll have to wait until the next meeting because we have to approve the minutes that those are contained in. So, but this saves us a step
Yes.
Right.
and a month that it cost us last year. So I move that we approve the letter as read into the minutes to CS Bank for the removal of old signees and addition of new signees to the signature cards.
Second.
That was Kevin and Pat. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I wasn't voting, I forgot. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to 0. Motion carries.
And that being said, it would expedite things if perhaps our next workshop, we could do
A special meeting?
a special meeting beforehand just for the sole purpose of approving the minutes.
I would like that.
We can get this to the bank the very next day.
You mean they don't have to hang around from October till February?
Yeah, remember that? That was funny when it took so long last time. Do I need to talk to Kim about getting a special meeting set up that time, or will you want to, or?
Yeah, we'll have to have an agenda for it, and then we send that to Kim, and she
Okay.
gets the notice out.
Okay. That's good. Okay. What's next? Commissioner comments. Let's start down there with Mark's end.
Good to be here. I hope to know a lot more next time. I'm sitting in the chair and I have a little bit more experience and knowledge about the park system.
Oh, good. Thank you. Kevin?
Tag, you're it.
I will say thank you to Kevin
Yeah.
for being chair during a time that has been difficult, especially serving on the Finance Committee also. And I'm looking forward to lots of positive, constructive, productive time for our commission this year.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Sue?
I would thank Kevin and Scott Barden as well.
Yes, and Scott Barden, they've worked very hard.
They spent hours
And
going through
hours and
books
hours.
and doing other things, and it was very helpful.
Yes. Sue?
Yeah. So I actually have a couple of things. And the first is a real kudos to parks. I think they came up with this brilliant idea. They were cutting down cedar in the glades, and they had this extra wood. They got it milled, and they got it converted into bridges. And those bridges are up. There's 2 at Lake Leatherwood by the ball fields, and there is one at Black Bass. And I just think that is really great. But there is a little but there, though, and that's I'm a little concerned that the finishing on that, some of the boards are not level, and also there's just major splinters. I would hate to have any kids walking around there. It'd just be very easy, so I'm hoping that that can get fixed.
Yeah, and if I could just answer that real quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
That one bridge that is a little uneven, I've asked, that they were supposed to have trimmed the board down and didn't. I did ask Vince, our maintenance person, he's going to go in, relieve those screws, put shims in, and tighten them back down.
Cool,
So I
thank you.
agree with you that is, it could have been better.
Yeah, well, I think it will be great. It just
Yes.
needs an extra couple of
Yes.
steps.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The other is, and I know the bridge is being built and this hasn't been done yet, but I'm really asking, when you're looking into signage, you take into account hikers. Right now, as you approach from the parking area, there's a sign that says downhill. There's nothing, I mean, not on an arrow. There's nothing that lets those people know that's a multi-use trail. Maybe you want to think about speed limits or just some way to minimize the packs on hikers there. And then I want to make sure, if as hikers, I mean, if people are going to walk that bridge, whether they know it's there initially or not, that people just cross bridges. and then they're going to see a trail, and it's going to take them up to between the old parking area and the shuttle turnaround. And I really want, there's no access to maps there, so I really want to make sure you think through and can get those people, if they want to get onto the Miners Rock and going around. Because if everything is done with just thinking about mountain bikers, then it's going to get very confusing. And we're going to have people wandering into the downhill trails, and it's going to be very dangerous.
So I will tell you that we have been working on maps
Okay.
and signage for the better part of a year, and it has not been mountain bike centric.
Okay,
It
good,
has been
Good. I just wanted
focused on all users.
Good,
Yes.
good. No, I'm hoping that's the case, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to get
It
that
is.
in there before things did get out.
And
It is the case.
And the materials have been ordered for those signs. We have a contract in place for the graphics company that will create the signs. In fact, some of the posts are already in place. We have a mock-up of sorts in my office. I think you've
No,
seen
I have not.
Oh, okay.
No.
You were in the office, you just didn't see it.
Well, we were talking about
Okay. So next time you're in, I'll show it to you.
Oh, well, maybe I'll come by something.
Okay.
Yeah, if I just came, if you weren't there, can Nikki show it to me?
Oh, yeah, it's the color's different, but the color of the sign itself.
Okay,
But,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan, Scott, do you have anything else to say? I'm sorry, is it Commissioner comment or a comment
I'm not.
at the end? Jonathan? Commissioner's comments at the end?
Looking forward to our work on grievance. Yeah.
Good. Welcome.
Can I give you a list?
Pat?
I'm looking forward to working with Mark on the Finance Committee, and this has been a productive meeting, and I look forward to good sharing of information and good collaboration in the coming year. Thank you.
Me too. Good.
All right?
Good thoughts. Okay, we have minutes to approve. Still, we did the beginning of
No,
we
we
did all
got those
those,
at the
right?
beginning.
That was the part I missed. I'm sorry. So we just need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Kevin, Pat,
I'll second.
oh, Sue, second. All in favor? Or sorry, discussion? No. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're adjourned.